Hello and welcome to the Paranormal A to Z podcast. My name is Zach Shanes. With me, as always, my co-host Austin Sashko.
Hello, everyone.
Is that how you prefer to be known? Is that how you would like me to refer to you as?
I don't have a fake name given for this podcast yet.
Okay. Well, we can always work on them, but as long as we're proud of what we do.
Or until we get negative feedback, at which point we immediately change our names and remove ourselves from the internet.
Well, that's the hermit crab approach, where you just curl up, become completely immune to criticism. Hermit-like. Not the point. I think we have some nice topics today. We're going to talk about some of our favorite paranormal, unexplained, and generally weird things.
Mm-hmm.
You got some good stuff today?
I got a good thing. I picked my favorite UFO encounter.
Oh, I do love UFO encounters. I know this is something that you are personally absolutely terrified of.
Yes, absolutely.
Would you say this is your number one fear?
Grays. Gray aliens. Their notion. Them being around me. Terrifying.
God.
It might go number one bees, number two grays.
See, I was unaware of the distinction of grays as an alien. When you think of a classic alien, long, thin body, big black eyes, I didn't realize that was an actual classification amongst...
Oh yeah. The reason being, people report there are more than one kind. So they have to make distinctions. Oh, and we'll get into those.
Oh, I'm absolutely sure we will. And I'm really excited to find out about these different kinds of aliens, really. That's something that does fascinate me. Mm-hmm. I'll be staying on planet Earth for my topic, which we'll begin with. This is one of my favorite absolute creepy, strange, unexplainable things, and it's within the realm of just something I happen to love. I'm a huge film buff. We're going to go into the mid-1950s, if you'll allow me.
Take us back.
Taking you back to the height of a blossoming, really well-known, gorgeous guy. His name is James Dean. This is a person who is just taking Hollywood by storm and died under some very, very suspicious circumstances. Now, if anybody knows about this, that anything about James Dean's sort of background, he was also heavy into racing. He loved racing cars. He was particularly fond of Porsche vehicles. So James Dean purchased a Porsche 550 Spider. This is a beautiful car. One of the most unsafe cars ever created, but still, it's a gorgeous car.
Perfect. Let's race it.
It was, got it custom painted, got it all, we wanted to make this car, uniquely his. After Rebel Without a Cause, mm-hmm. chicken races, that sort of thing, he wanted to build upon this image that he was this bad boy, this racer, but that's also part of who he really was. So it was very cool to see him take on this persona.
Yeah.
Well, he was racing California highways in 1955.
Okay.
Tries to do what's known as a sidestepping maneuver, crashes head on with somebody.
Ooh.
Yeah, not very good.
In the most unsafe vehicle possible.
Pretty much, yes.
And also in the 1950s.
Yes, not a good time to be in a head-on collision in any sort of vehicle. Little strange background on this. James Dean had this car for a very short time when this had happened.
Yeah.
He met actor Sir Alec Guinness of Obi-Wan Kenobi fame to most people.
Okay.
Outside of a restaurant. They didn't plan on meeting each other. But Guinness told James Dean that the car felt sinister. It appeared like it was just an evil thing. It was a beautiful car, but in the most evil, unsafe way possible. And he tells James Dean, if you get in that car, you'll be found dead in it by the end of the week. Exactly 7 days later, James Dean got in this car accident.
That's creepy. Question about this, though.
Okay.
Is this more a strange prophecy about what will happen to James Dean, or a strange foretelling that this man will one day be a Jedi?
A transcendent Jedi who is going to appear as a blue, washed-out, shitty hologram as a bunch of dancing teddy bears play music on Stormtrooper helmets. That's the best-case scenario of your afterlife, right?
I didn't know there was any other kind of music.
I'd like to also point out at this point that this car was given a oddly fitting nickname when they were customizing it. The Little Bastard is what they called it.
Oh, fantastic. And what caused it to be given this nickname?
Just the appearance. It had an appearance that it was like a troublemaker, It was It's a small, A very streamlined car. You ever seen a 550?
No, I haven't.
Take a look at it. It is a very cool looking car. It was silver. It was customized with the number 130, I believe. Maybe 150.
Okay, this is the Porsche 550 Spider?
Correct.
Okay.
Do a search for James Dean's vehicle, James Dean car. I'm fairly sure that's the first thing that comes up.
Okay.
But this car is a motherfucker. Not just a little bastard. This car wreaked havoc everywhere it went. So, this car killed and maimed a lot of other people that came in contact with it. It wasn't just James Dean. So, a guy named George Barris, he was the lead customizer on the car. There was another guy who did some custom pinstriping on it.
Yeah.
He buys the wrecked shell of the little bastard. Spends $2,500 on this thing because it's already becoming like a piece of like lore. Because James Dean was a big deal, and him dying in these really unsavory circumstances, like this car had this stigma attached to it. So he takes this opportunity to get this thing.
Okay.
While it's being initially transported, it slips off the trailer that they put it on and breaks a mechanic's leg. Already still causing more problems. So Barris sells the engine and the drivetrain to two individuals named Troy McHenry and William Eschred. These are both racing buffs, guys looking for good parts. Mm-hmm. This car was brand spanking new, so these parts salvaged were worth a lot of money. Got them at a high discount, so this was good for them. The two of them were racing against each other. One of them, McHenry to be specific, lost control of his car, crashed into a tree, killing him instantly. And Eschred was also seriously injured. His car suddenly locked up almost simultaneously to when he crashed. The other guy crashed into the tree, rolled over onto him while he was going through a turn.
Ugh.
Badly injured. Lived, but...
Now, question. Were they both driving the Porsche 550s?
The parts. They had
parts. Did they have the same? Did they have the same car that the?
No, they were Porsches. It didn't say in the article I was looking at what kind of cars they had, but I think they were both Porsches as well. But so, this all just might be like a long-winded story about how you shouldn't buy a 1950s Porsche. We'll
just
come to
terrible quality assurance and manufacturing.
Oh, just wait. Listen to this.
A tale of woe.
Oh my God. Listen to this. So the Barris had 2 tires left from the original 550. They were untouched in the accident somehow. I'm not totally sure how.
Okay.
He sold them, and not long after, the person who put them on their car, both the tires blow out simultaneously, causing the new owner's car to just run off the road. Mostly uninjured, both tires at the same time.
Huh.
So Barris keeps this car. At this point, I don't know why he would do this.
Well,
but
here's the thing. The justification I can make for him keeping it is, do you want to cross this car in any way?
I don't think so. But it's crossing him. I don't think Barris did anything to this car.
He's been selling off parts. It's been getting revenge.
It's not whole anymore. Taking it apart, it's like, if you're not whole, like in the Rastafarian sense, you might as well not even be alive. So Barris keeps this car in this garage, and there were a couple of thieves who were poking around trying to find, car parts to steal. Yeah. So they go up to the carcass of this 550. One of the thieves' arms gets ripped way open, bleeds everywhere while trying to steal the steering wheel, and the other one was injured trying to remove one of the seats that still had James Dean's blood all over it. Oh,
right.
Yeah, I know. That's the way you want to see. So Barris wants to get rid of this car. He wants to hide it. He wants it out of public view in any way, because he thinks this thing is cursed at this point. Like, everyone who's coming in contact with this car is getting hurt, dying. There's just nothing good about it.
Yeah.
So the California Highway Patrol convinces him to put it in a highway safety exhibit, because it's been involved in so many terrible things. It's like, let's make an example of this car. Let's make it an exhibit, and let's show everyone how to not be safe. So the first exhibit was pretty unsuccessful, because the garage that had the car in it caught fire and burned to the ground. Here's what's strange. The car suffered virtually no damage from the fire.
Well, the car started the fire.
Well, I know, but still, it's amazing. Like, if you start a fire around yourself, typically you're going to get hurt too, but regardless. The next exhibit's at a local high school. The car falls off the display and breaks a student's hip. So it's still on a rampage. This thing is still trying to fuck with people. So it doesn't end there. They transport it away from this high school because they don't want it near them anymore because that thing's fucking cursed. And the car that was carrying it lost control, and the driver fell out and somehow got crushed by the spider on the back after he fell out of the car. The car fell off of 2 more transport trucks while it was traveling on the freeway and didn't injure anybody else. But at this point, they decide, okay, we've had enough of this thing. So they transport the car back to Mr. Barris, and since then, the car has vanished. No one knows where this thing is anymore. It's supposedly still wreaking havoc somewhere, but after all these incidents, they're like, okay, we've had enough of this thing. So here's my question. Do you believe that an object such as this, like something that has as much personality to it as a car, something that belonged to such a noteworthy person, like, can this thing actually be cursed, or is this just like a long-winded description of how Porsche needed better quality assurance in their parts?
I think it's a combination of both those things.
Because it couldn't be a coincidence that it hurt this many people.
No, it seems strange. It seems very strange. I mean, there's also a lot to look at here. Like you said, initially, like, what was the quality assurance and the test done by Porsche in the 1950s when creating a sports car?
They were much less safe as compared to today, but granted, 60 years later.
Yeah. And, I mean, with safety features and protocols needed for cars today with accidents and so forth, like, I'm sure they got away with just about anything. Like, this thing looks like it was built for speed.
And that's it.
If this thing rolled or flipped, I mean, there was nothing to protect your head from being smashed against the cement in this tiny convertible. I mean, it looks like a ballsy car. It looks like a car that you were going to drive and drive fast, and that was its sole purpose.
Exactly, and that's the persona that he was trying to convey with this too.
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of guy he was, and yeah, it is made for speed. Like this thing is meant to be raced.
Yeah. And that's exactly what it looks like. And it looks like there is not one safety feature on this car.
No. The windshield barely exists.
Yeah, the windshield is there to maybe deflect bugs at best. I don't even think it covers your face enough to do that.
No, I think you have to wear sunglasses along with
You do. Like, a lot of the images I've seen of this car, people wearing glasses while driving.
Well, they're trying to look cool. It's the 50s. Everybody's trying to look sweet. We're in the wake of World War II. Everybody's feeling good. The economy's doing well. You know, everybody's feeling good.
Let's buy our crappy Porsche and get slaughtered.
Yeah, exactly right.
But I think it's the combination. I think it's like 1950s quality, like quality assurance and like safety features mixed in with 1950s, like the era it was in, and that traffic laws back then.
Oh yeah, they weren't that great.
So you have this. So you might have a car that was just like, it might be a sports car and it might be made by a reputable company, but who knows that this just happened to be a really poorly made car, or this sole car of the group that was made, like, just had defects.
It had defects, but the thing is that, like, even with a car with defects, should not be able to hurt 10 different people in different ways. I mean, it's not just people who drove the car, it's people who touched the car. It's people that were just in the same fucking room as the car.
I get that. And I think there's something to be said about that, especially the notion, like, if people understood whose car that was, you get this air, like how he thought. What was the individual who owned the car's name who thought it was cursed?
Oh, George Barris.
Barris might have thought it was cursed, and this cursed stigma might get out there. And I think bad things start happening when people take on a negative attitude and start actually believing this is cursed. Because when people start actually believing that this thing could possibly hurt me, I have a sense like it's going to an accident like that could actually happen, because they might actually start believing it can, and they do something to put themselves in a situation, maybe not consciously of doing it, where they get hurt. I mean, so the two things that were sold off to other cars, they got put in other Porsches.
Yeah.
And racing. They said that both accidents with these parts happened in two cars during the same race and happened almost at the exact same time. That's weird. I mean, we'd need more race details to see what was happening. Also, if these were both Porsche 550s, I mean, with James Dean thing, it didn't have a great, like, well, he had an actual accident because he was racing and being
Right.
Reckless.
In a head-on collision,
Yeah.
which even in a modern, well-equipped safety feature car,
Yeah.
head-on collision numbers are not good for
No.
mortality rate.
No, it's a large object stopping immediately. You
Yeah.
are not doing well with that. But the other thing would be looking at the car's actual like safety statistics and how many people died while racing these, or how many people died racing in general in the 50s in cars like this.
Probably a very decent amount.
So am I going to say that each of those parts had an exact impact on that car failing and having an issue? Not necessarily. It's weird that both people who bought those didn't. I think it's a strange coincidence, but I don't know if it has anything to do with the parts being put in there.
Sure, but both of those tires exploding simultaneously, yeah.
Could he have? It doesn't mention if he ran over anything.
It doesn't actually. So yes, he could have gone over something, but it was the two tires. I don't know if they were the front or the rear. It was the two tires from because two tires from somewhere else, two tires from the 550.
Yeah.
I'd like to know if they were front and back, front and side, both
if
front,
they were
both back.
the only if they exploded. Well, even then, I mean, if the tires weren't checked and they were kept at a weird pressure and put on a new car, and maybe their pressure was different from the other tires. Again, I don't know enough about mechanics to know this. I am speculating.
Neither do I. It just seems crazy. Like
Yeah.
I've driven a fair amount of cars, and I've seen other people have car problems. I feel like two tires simultaneously blowing out is not normal.
If they were both at the front of the car, that would lead me to think that he hit something.
Yeah.
Like he ran something over, both his tires went out. Like if they were both in the front, if they were both in the back, I'd feel weird about it because if the front tires passed over something and then something somehow got under the car and in front of the two rear tires, weird.
Something like the corpse of James Dean, maybe.
Of course, James Dean rolls into the car and punctures the rear two tires because he's covered in spikes.
Yeah. Ate a lot of hair gel, man. That guy was spiky as shit.
Yeah.
But moving away from just the parts, the people who were just near it, like the two individuals trying to steal the car, like trying to take the steering wheel off of it, gets his arm ripped open. The other guy is trying to take the seat out of the car, he gets hurt. It's just like two people stealing things being startled. It's like, they catch them and they're trying to scamper away and they both get hurt simultaneously.
Yeah, or think about the act of doing this. Let's say it's tucked in a darkened garage. You don't want anyone to notice it. You're trying to do this while probably also holding a flashlight and trying to take a car apart.
Well, I hope they weren't holding a flare or something.
Oh, I know. But I mean, just think about the act. You're in a pitch black garage. You have a flashlight, maybe you have it in your mouth to light things, and you're trying to take something apart.
Yeah.
How easy would it be to just happen I didn't see a sharpened edge on something. Again, 1950s car.
Yeah. Not safe.
Not safe.
Very sharp.
Lots of knives just sticking out of various parts of the car. But
you never know when you're going to need a knife. It needs to be right there on the dash. It needs to be available. James Dean had a lot of things to cut.
The Porsche 550 knife.
Yeah.
Cutting its way to you.
Would you say it's cutting edge? I'm
I'd
sorry.
say.
I'm already sorry. Wow, that was terrible.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Yeah, okay.
For the listeners that just stopped,
I'm sorry.
please come back.
Please come back. Well, let's continue on. So the thing gets moved. Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4 more times.
I think the most interesting fact, for me the most interesting part of it is the fire, because I get when people are touching the car and having it happen. I can get when, let's say, if they have it on display somewhere and the car just happens to keep falling off its display. I think that's hilarious. I don't know if people are they're not strapping this thing incorrectly or they're not using the.
Maybe it was hard to hold down because 2 displays, I think 4 or 5 different transport trucks. Every time this thing was put somewhere or moved anywhere, it fucked people up.
My issue with it. I mean, it's a tiny car. I don't understand. Is it designed in such a way where people who are transporting it couldn't find an easy way to to hook it onto their truck with a chain and just keep it in place? I'd have to ask somebody, be like, if you were going to transport this car, how would you do it?
the thing. Well, like these days, that's a historical vehicle. And
Yeah.
the technology obviously has gotten much further along, and I'm sure there's very few auto transport accidents. Though it's probably very funny if like that does happen, or like a truck transporting vehicles gets into an accident. There was a Stephen Wright bit about that, where this guy who was driving a truck with all the cars was picking up hitchhikers, and everybody on the back of the truck got their own car, and they're all just hanging out in that. The guy gets a speeding ticket, and they all get tickets inside of that.
That's good.
It is a good joke. I love Stephen Wright jokes. But yeah, a car is in a garage. It's unattended.
Yeah.
Not bothering anybody. It's just sitting there, and then...
Car's docile in nature, doing what it does.
I would disagree with that, but it was just sitting there, and there aren't a lot of details around how the fire started.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, fires can be kind of hard to trace back what started them. If there wasn't like an accelerant at work, and you got to imagine crime scene in the arson unit in Southern California probably isn't the most technologically advanced at this point.
Yeah.
But it's like everywhere this thing went, something happened to it.
Well, I mean, for me, for the fire is, if it was, again, it would be more detail needed on the story, but if it was a wanton destruction of the entire building, and the one thing that escaped unscathed was that car, to me that's interesting. It's like, did it happen to be just in the perfect spot where this thing just didn't get touched? That seems improbable. Or... It's not impossible. It just seems improbable. Like, that was in the perfect spot to not get burned.
And all of like the surrounding circumstances with it, it's just like you'd think this car was out to just get everybody, and it's only
seems
out
like
for
it was
itself.
Forged in hell.
It's the little bastard.
Yeah.
I mean, like what else? Like, could you think of a better name for this car? Now that you've heard everything that's gone on with this thing, is there a better name for the thing than they originally gave it before it did anything? Before like any of this stuff occurred?
No, I think that's a fitting name at that time to give that car.
It's the perfect name. Perfect person to drive this thing too.
So that was my most interesting thing in the fire. My favorite thing is the man who got crushed by it. That sounds terrible.
So it's like, picture this. You're driving a transport vehicle, and you're going down the road, and you're starting to crash, and you're sort of doing the bombardier, I've got to get out of here, dive, tuck, and roll thing to try to save yourself. And you're falling out. Meanwhile, simultaneously, this demon fucking car falls off the back and then takes you out as it's going. Like, could you imagine going onto that scene, being that police officer looking at it? What if, like, the police officer had known, like, the history of this car and saw what would happen and, like, I wouldn't go anywhere near it. I'd be like, you know what? I'm not touching this.
Well, there's the first problem in what happened here. I mean, well, one, did it say if the car actually detached or the car just crushed him?
Let me check my facts here very quickly.
Okay. So that, for me, that's a key point to that.
Okay. Yeah, the car fell off the back and crushed him.
Oh, okay. Because what I thought was what happened was, well, again, here's the other thing for me. So follow me this. Like, there's a difference between when you say fall off the back. It makes it sound like he's out of control. He's going to crash. He jumps out as the car is going, or the transport truck's still going, and then the car somehow detaches and then falls off on top of him. It makes it sound like that. But what I think it actually is kind of you kind of describe it. Like, the truck's going out of control. Maybe the truck's going to flip. He jumps out, which I think is a bad idea whenever you're in an accident.
Idea. Oh, yeah.
Especially if a car is going to roll. But picture you jumping out of a car that's going to roll, and then as it's turning, like, the car on the back
is coming with it. Yeah, that makes sense.
And if that also happens to roll, I think he had a chance of being crushed by the transport vehicle first. I think the way it's written makes you think, like, oh my god, he jumped out of the truck and then the car jumped off the back of the truck and attacked him.
Right, which was what makes it sound even better. But I think it's just coincidental that, like, as he was leaving, that part of the vehicle hit him. Like, it had to be that car, despite the fact that the regular truck would have crushed him. But, of course, the little bastard had to put its little thumbprint on this. Like, I might as well take it.
Dad.
I can add you to my list. Another notch in the old drivetrain. I do like the fact that nobody knows where it is now. I think that adds just, like, a nice little just like a little cherry on the little bastard sundae is that no one knows where this thing is now. It still probably exists.
Oh, absolutely.
In some fashion.
I'd like to think it's kind of in a police protection program, living a quiet life up in Lake Oregon as a bakery owner.
Right. Its killing days are behind it. It's like a retired contract killer who's like seasoned and knows better.
Mm-hmm.
It and Jason Statham are like on a beach somewhere clinking Long Island iced teas together.
And just kind of like, oh, we did a great job.
We killed a lot of people. We took a lot of mothers down. Like
that's great. Like that's a really interesting, weird set of circumstances around one vehicle.
It's very bizarre. Like I hadn't heard of any one thing belonging to somebody being so cursed that wasn't like a creepy doll. You know, like Annabelle, something like that. This is a car. This is something that this guy loved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, but also keep in mind when reading these things, knowing what's actually fact with it versus what are embellished stories of the actual urban legend. Because we know,
absolutely,
we know how urban legends work. I mean, especially around here, Crybaby Bridge. Mm-hmm. How many Crybaby Bridges are there around this part of Ohio?
I mean, innumerable.
You throw a rock, you hit a Crybaby Bridge.
Right, exactly.
You throw another rock, you hit the crying baby at the bridge. There's so many of them.
Right.
But yeah, that's always something to keep in mind when reading about urban legends. I mean, they're always very cool, but always take it with that grain of salt that how many of these things actually happened or how many are embellished pieces of history.
Oh, right. And that goes for any paranormal experience as well, too. Like, you have to keep a skeptical mind about it, but just the fact that all of these things were reported and attributed to this one particular piece of equipment is fascinating.
It is. It's really cool. Especially, I mean, if it's all accurate and it's all part of it. And even the fact that, like, I don't know, just all of it added together just makes for one creepy, awful 1950s sports car.
Yeah. The worst 1950s sports car. The little bastard.
The little bastard. Our most feared car.
Speaking of things that we fear, I know that now we're going to start talking about something that you fear the most.
Oh, yes. It has something to do with what I fear the most. But this is one of my favorite UFO stories. And it happened here in our own backyard.
Did it now?
Yes. This is the Portage County UFO chase from 1966.
Okay.
And this was for another film buff kind of thing. This is what Steven Spielberg used in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He modeled the UFO chase in Close Encounters after this UFO chase.
That's great. One of my favorite alien encounter movies.
Yes. Of the alien encounter movies.
Yeah, well, I've watched quite a few. I mean, like, when it comes to them, it's like, you don't have a ton to choose from, but I certainly like it better than Independence Day.
Oh, yes. Yes, I mean, it's just a fabulous movie. That Richard Dreyfuss in that.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
Anytime you start sculpting mashed potatoes in the mountains, who hasn't done that?
I mean, the 5-year-old in me was just jumping for joy when I saw that scene.
All right, but the actual UFO chase here. So, it's back in 1966, and what makes it immediately jump out to me is there's a lot of interesting things that happen with this account. So back in 1966, this UFO, the first report came in from a woman in Portage County, Ohio. Now, or actually no, the first report came in from Summit County, so the Akron area of Ohio, so very close to where we are.
Sure.
So a woman reports it, and the first thing, it was a brightly lit object as big as a house, but too low to be a plane flying over her neighborhood. So this first woman, she looks out the door or window and sees this object flying. An issue I'll immediately take with it is she's giving it a size comparison. Like, this is how big this thing is. This is how low it's flying. If it's at nighttime, because it's a brightly lit object, so I assume nighttime, seeing this, that when you're trying to size something against the night sky and it's an illuminated object, it's really hard to do.
Oh yeah.
Because unless you have something that is an equal distance away, trying to compare the size of something like that. Really difficult. So I'm guessing, like, saying size comparison, not accurate.
Well, you always need something for scale.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why we always use bananas for scale. That's just like, common internet trope. It's like banana for scale. Just banana, so you know.
It's about banana size.
Banana-sized UFOs.
And just bananas all over the sky. But her initial report was, like, laughed off immediately by the people doing it in 1966. It's like, oh, haha, whatever. Probably not a real thing. Don't really give it any mind.
Crazy old lady.
Crazy old lady, middle of the night, sees this object flying.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't take that seriously either.
But then, shortly thereafter, I think his name's Dale Spar and Wilbur Neff, two officers who were on duty that night. They had, it was, let's see the route here. They were on route 224 near Ravenna. And they were investigating an abandoned car. And as they were investigating the abandoned car, the two officers came out and started to approach the car. And one of them had a typical thing he did, where whenever he got out of the car, I think it was Spar who did this. He would always look over his shoulder to make sure when they got out of the car and approached something, no one was coming behind them. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a safety thing when you're in that line of work.
Sure.
But when he did, it's when he first saw this object, and to quote him, it was I always looked behind me so no one could come up behind me. And when I looked in the wooded area behind me, I saw this thing. As it came over the trees, I looked at Barney, and he was still watching the car. And he didn't say nothing, and the thing kept getting brighter as the area started to get light. The object was about 50 feet in diameter, with a bright, well-defined light beam shining down from its bottom. When Barney Neff saw the object, he just stood there, with his mouth open for a minute as bright as it was, and he looked down. And I started looking down and looked at my hands and my clothes weren't burning or anything when it stopped right over us, right over top of us. The only sound in the whole area was a hum, like a transformer being loaded or an overloaded transformer when it discharges. I was petrified, and so I moved my right foot, and everything seemed to work all right. And evidently he made the same decision I did, and to get something between me and it, or us and it, or whatever you would say. So we both went for the car. We got in the car and sat there. So, two officers, middle of the night, checking an abandoned car on the state route near Ravenna. Mm-hmm. Get out. One's approaching the car. One guy looks over his shoulder towards a wooded area. Sees this craft, this thing, coming overhead, this bright light. Shines over eventually it comes over the both of them and shines down.
Terrifying.
Well, terrifying, right? Just in any circumstance like that, you are out in the middle of the night, and something comes over top of you and shines a giant beam of light down at you. Terrifying, no matter what it is. Terrifying.
Yeah, that could be some kind of just aircraft from somewhere else. Like, what year are we talking about here?
This is 1966.
1966. Okay, so I don't think we're in the middle of any wars here. But still, you never know when just some other rogue country is going to invent some flying technology, start flying over Portage, Ohio, terrifying police officers doing their routine inspections. But
yeah, and the one thing I liked about this is both of them they describe their reactions to it as very human. Like, it gets over them, like they immediately, when the light hits them, they're looking at this thing. They look at themselves. They're like, what's this doing? Am I still working okay? They're like moving their body parts, checking to see if anything's burning on them. Mm-hmm. And then after that moment, like, oh, okay, nothing's wrong. They book it back to the car. Mm-hmm. They're like, okay, we need to put some distance between us and this thing. So this is when things kind of kick off.
Okay, here we go.
All right. So the two officers jump back into their car and they radio back, and the sergeant on duty that night tells them to pursue the object because the object starts moving away.
What?
Yeah.
Pursue it?
They tell you pursue the object.
That doesn't sound smart. Here we go.
Here we go. So they told them to pursue the object, which they did, and so some of the speeds they get up to chasing this thing are 100 miles per hour. And they were constantly going back and forth over the radio, reporting their position to other squads cars from different jurisdictions. So this ends up happening over multiple jurisdictions and counties.
Oh my gosh, they really chased this thing.
Yes, they did. It's stated that several other officers also witnessed the UFO and joined the chase. A good example being Officer H. Wayne Houston, who saw the object being pursued by Spar and Neff's cruiser and joined in the bumper-to-bumper chase. So let's see here. We get a whole bunch of different reports from the officers how these came in. So let's see. Here's another quote. Spear and Neff turned south on Route 183, then back east on Route 224, which placed the object to the right and out to the left. At this time, said Spar, it came straight south, just one motion, buddy, just a smooth glide, and began moving east with them pacing it just to their right at an estimated altitude of 300 to 500 feet, illuminating the ground beneath it. Once more, the UFO darted to the north, now left of the car, and they sped up to over 100 miles an hour to keep pace with it. As the sky became brighter with pre-dawn light, Spear and Neff, we've been calling him Spar, but he's had his name spelled twice in these articles, two different ways in these articles, so we'll go with Spear.
Okay.
Spear and Neff saw the UFO in silhouette. With a vertical projection at its rear, the object began to take on a metallic appearance as the chase continued. Spear kept up a running conversation with other police cars that were trying to catch up with them. Once when they made a wrong turn at an intersection, here's a crazy thing. Once when they made a wrong turn at an intersection, the object stopped and then turned and came back to their position. And this ends up happening a number of times.
That's very interesting.
So what ends up happening here, and so here's another one. So this was Houston, who I talked about earlier. As they approached Unity, Ohio, East Palestine patrolman Wayne Houston drove to the edge of Route 14 and waited to see if he could observe the subject of the last quarter-hour excited radio traffic. In the northeast, he saw a light approaching that quickly took on detail and flew almost straight overhead, about 900 feet up, going over 80 miles an hour. Houston later described it as a flattened ice cream cone, a dark domed-like top with a cone-shaped light from a bright bottom. The light looked like a focused beam in smoke or fog, like a focused beam in smoke or fog would look, and it was tilted in the rear of the object's direction of travel. It's like a beam shining behind this weird, like, flattened ice cream cone-shaped object.
I'm looking at what appears to be the rendering from the officer Spar.
Yeah.
Had somebody help draw this particular thing. It looks like a messed up peach pit almost.
Okay.
Or like it almost looks like a geological thing.
Yeah. It's very interesting looking.
It's very strange. This is not how I would typically think of like normal aerodynamic craft design. But,
yeah. Well, yeah, that was Spear's drawing there of what he encountered. So continuing on from this point, the chase then continued 86 miles from Randolph to just across the state line into Pennsylvania. And as well as the police reports of the UFO moving from side to side above the road, changing its speeds and gaining and losing altitude, there's also this strange account describing how the object came down and waited near a bridge for the pursuing police officers. Spear said the lines of the object were very distinct. Someone had control over it. He said it wasn't just floating around; it can maneuver. The deputy said the chase slowed down near Rochester, Pennsylvania, when the cars got tangled up in a mess of bridges. But when I came out from under the bridge, it came down and waited for us, just as though it knew these two cars were following it. I know nobody's going to believe it, but it's true, he said. So these guys, and there's another one here, at one point, said Spear, they made a wrong turn at some bridges. When they got back on the right road, the object was there leading them. It dropped to an altitude of 500 feet and stopped and waited for us when we got tangled up. When we got on the road again, it started moving again, Spear said. So these things, or whatever this was apparently, it was like playing a game of cat and mouse with them.
It wanted them to follow it.
Yeah, it was
Absolutely.
It was just leading them on, according to these witnesses.
Almost sounds like it was having fun with
yeah,
it.
it's
like, let's taunt the humans. That's like, because this thing is, if it is a UFO, it's from another place. This thing is capable of massively fast speeds. If it's going to like travel from one habitable world to another,
yeah,
it's got to have crazy kinds of propulsion. It going 100 miles an hour has got to be like barely tapping the accelerator for this thing.
Yeah.
You know? And if it's maneuvering around at that low of an altitude, it means A, it wants to be seen, and it wants to be pursued. It's
Yeah.
also shining light on them, like visible, like eye interpreting spectral light.
Yeah.
It's just
It's a very strange report. And here's where it continues to take more turns of the bizarre. Okay. So as they're going, the Spears and Neff's police cruiser got low on fuel, and they actually had to borrow fuel and enlist another officer to help with the pursuit.
oh god.
And so here's where it gets a little more murky, and why this becomes a little more interesting. So they ended up the UFO when they stopped the use. They witnessed that the UFO stopped hovering over Harmony Township, maybe around they said an approximate altitude of 1,000 feet. When it suddenly shot straight up into the air, shooting up, and I said maybe up to another 2,500 feet up, so 3,500 feet. There is speculation that the vertical ascent of the UFO was due to incoming jet aircraft scrambled to pursue the object, and it's also stated that the officers could actually see planes coming into the area, and yet the U.S. government denies any such action was taken. But here's a couple more interesting things on that. Also relevant is the report that the officers did hear dispatch traffic on their police radio concerning the aircraft scramble, and a notation was entered in the records of the Columbiana County radio log stating that Peter Thien contacted the Pittsburgh PD unit and they scrambled some jets that flew under the object.
So they did. There was some outside intervention.
So there apparently what these officers were seeing was also seen on a larger scale.
Gotcha.
Which all of this would later be denied.
Of
course it would.
But this thing had to have shown up on some kind of radar then. Something picked this up because they knew about it.
Yeah, they knew about it, or the fact that all these individuals. It was over radio traffic for so long during this entire chase. This 86 miles.
Hours.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that they're going 100 miles an hour, like they had to be chasing this thing for hours.
Yeah, but this was a long chase. I mean, there's multiple police officer witnesses to this. I mean, the thing that makes it interesting is these individuals they're trained in this sort of thing. They're trained to make detailed observations. They're trained to look for things.
Yes, they are.
And for something like this to happen, and then to pursue for such a long time, and then for all these other interesting bits of information to come in, like, hey, there is a supposed other police officers from other counties are reporting this. There's supposedly incoming fighter jets watching this object, and watch what it does with moving up and down, side to side, stopping and waiting for them. It's all so interesting that this sort of thing happened. And apparently this story, outside of people who actually investigate UFOs, is kind of an unknown story. It's not a super popular one, but it's probably one of the more interesting ones I've ever read.
Right, and I haven't even heard of this one. This happened in the state that we live in, and I have an interest in UFO and unexplained things, obviously, but I haven't even heard of this. The only time I heard of it is when you mentioned it to me as the inspiration for a movie that I had seen, which it's a fairly popular movie. It's not Spielberg's most popular by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
But still a part of common culture. And you'd think that, you'd see a movie about this. It's like, is there inspiration behind it?
Yes.
Is there a first-hand account? And apparently there is.
Yeah, and so it was this weird night in 1966 when a group of police officers from Portage County began an 86-mile UFO chase across the Pennsylvania state line.
I mean, that's a pretty good night as far as I'm concerned. If you're in Portage, Ohio, and you're a traffic officer, you're lucky if you hand out a couple of speeding tickets here or there. If you get a chance to chase an unidentified object 86 miles, just speed around in your car, and I mean, I'm thinking Portage, this really is I wouldn't call it farmland, but it's big open country-ish land with not a lot of man-made light out there, especially not in the 60s. It gets dark out there when you go out there now.
Actually, an amendment to that, it was probably more than 86 miles. It was 86 miles from Randolph. to just across the state line in Pennsylvania.
Randolph, Ohio?
Yeah.
I'm looking at where that is right now. That's another place. Like, I'm from Ohio. I have no idea where this is.
They're tiny townships.
Yeah, it's a little tiny township. There's a Bob's Pizza and drive-thru here. That sounds
fantastic.
I mean, that might be a reason for us to go check out the fairgrounds here. But it's outside of Akron.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just south of Ravenna. So it's not that far from where they began.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm looking at where the state line is. They had to go all the way through like the Youngstown area, maybe like further north towards Ashtabula.
Well, no, I mean, think of they're following State Route 244.
Gotcha.
So that goes I'm guessing they followed that for the most part across.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right here. Wow, there's a long way to go. They went through like Grove City. They went through Clintonville, St. Petersburg.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they went a long way. That's way outside their jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another really strange thing too, is that, like, you're going this far, you're pursuing something, you don't know what it is. Like, what's the end game? Let's say it stopped. It just stops and it's just like floating right above them and they could see it and it's not going anywhere. It's doing what it was doing initially, which was just kind of hovering a couple hundred feet above them. It's shining light down.
Mm-hmm.
What then? Then what do you do? What if it comes down and pod bay doors start opening? What if little green men in shiny suits come outside and they've got like baked goods or some type of new technology to show you?
I'd feel sad because we don't probably have the currency they want to buy those cookies. They're only taking cash.
Whoops, we brought cookies.
Oops.
Don't have any space cash. Sorry, guys. No, but as funny as that is, I mean, how else could they have thought this was going to end?
I don't know. I mean, put yourself in a similar situation. Maybe not a police officer. Let's say you're not a police officer in the 1960s in Portage County, Ohio, checking out an abandoned car on Route 224.
I'd rather be a bowling alley clerk at that point.
No offense to Portage County Police.
Or bowling alley clerks.
But anyone in that matter, if you saw something like that, would you be satisfied with seeing it and experiencing it and then allowing it to move on and do whatever it does? Or would you pursue it?
I have to pursue it. My curiosity always gets the better of me in this situation. Like, I'm thinking of... I moved in my apartment not that long ago, and there were these random lights, these searchlights that were up in the sky, and I was like, I have to know what these are. So I get in the car with my friend, and we drive, and we're looking all over trying to figure out what these lights are. And that's just, like, I remember what that feeling was like, that unknown thing, and, like, what are we doing, and, like, where is it, and, like, we gotta find out what this is. And then we found out that it was a bunch of searchlights on top of a really shitty cell phone kiosk sort of place, like one of, like, those, like, wireless toys places. So
sometimes the ends aren't what you hope they are.
Right, but I didn't think that was any sort of paranormal thing.
No.
It was just an unknown thing. I want to know what the source is, where it's coming from. I want to know the story behind it. Mm-hmm. So if it's something like this, you better believe I'm going to chase it as far as I can go. Yeah,
and I think that's the end game for these individuals as well. It's like, not that they're on duty and they have a job, but I mean...
Right, they were ordered to do this.
Yes, they were ordered to do this. Ordered to pursue. I think they would have done it regardless.
I'm thinking of, like, when we read back earlier, like, they are like, we have to put space between us and this thing. They jumped in the car and they were, like, not avoiding it, but they wanted to be safe from this thing. Like, maybe they didn't feel, like, exactly threatened by it, but if you don't know what the hell is right above you, you don't know what it's capable of, I wouldn't want to be exposed.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'd like to know if they did, in fact, like, would have, like, disobeyed orders, like, go back and, sit on the side of the road. It's nothing. Mm-hmm. Go back to looking for drunk drivers and people to give speeding tickets to, versus there's something you can't explain what it is hovering around shining lights on things.
Yeah. I think anyone who had that option been like, we're going for the weird object shining lights on things.
It's a life experience. I mean, I'm sure there's timid people who wouldn't want to, but
absolutely,
this show isn't for them.
No, this show is not for those people.
Still, I'd love to know what was going through those people's minds.
I still think I believe some of the officers are still around who were involved with this.
I'm sure they're still around.
Yeah, well, maybe
long retired.
Yeah, maybe we'll shoot them an email. They're like, "Hello, we have a weird podcast. Would you like to send us an email about this?"
I mean, what else are they doing? Or we could just ask them about their grandkids and then just like sneak in like, by the way.
How's your grandson doing? Oh, that's nice. Remember that UFO you saw?
Can we talk about that?
Oh man!
But I'm sure Jimmy's doing great. I'm sure his 5th grade science project is just out of this world.
Which also happens to be a replica of the UFO his grandfather saw.
You know what? That would be great if that would give me some kind of hope if like there was a grandson who knew about someone's involvement in something like this and like wanted to like pursue something like that, take it into school and have everyone just be like, "What? What did your grandpa see? And what Steven Spielberg movie? Was it that one with the big brown turd who liked Reese's Pieces? No, then I don't care." I think E.T.'s a little overrated, a little off subject, but
no, I don't like E.T.
I mean,
I follow my mother's view of Spielberg movies, and that was whenever he made, and this kind of also applies to George Lucas's movies as well. Same area of time. Whenever for some reason they started getting kids involved with them, she immediately began hating them.
This is gonna open up a whole other can of worms, but the Star Wars prequels, Anakin Skywalker as a little kid. If you would like to see acting that would make you want to stab out both of your eyes and rip out your eardrums simultaneously, it's Jake Lloyd in The Phantom Menace, Star Wars Episode 1. Ugh, God, I just, child actors can be good. The one exception is that I would have to bring up is Kick-Ass. Chloe Moretz is Hit Girl.
Mm-hmm.
That was phenomenal. But that's the exception. Most of the time, child acting, it's just a death sentence. It really, no, I know. Maybe I have a pessimistic view on this. I
think that was bright and chipper, Zach. I think that was great.
I love kids. I worked for a child psychologist for 5 years, and I worked with kids age 9 through 16.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of experience working with kids. They're just not good actors. They have a hard enough time just making it in the real world, growing up in a fast-paced, complex society like we do. Then you throw something at them like, okay, memorize all these lines, yet that you have this motivation and that, and it's just like, I don't know what's happening to my body. How am I supposed to figure out what the fuck is going on here? Personal view.
That's fair.
We got far off subject.
That's all right. But I mean, that wrapped up my information about the Portage County UFO chase and my interest in it. And I think it's one of my favorite UFO cases.
It's definitely a good one. I like the fact that it was local for us as well.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting place to just go check out, because I know you've confirmed this. I feel like a lot of these sightings, a lot of times when these strange objects are seen, they're in rural areas with low amounts of synthetic light and not a lot of people around.
No. I mean, you get the rare occasions where people over a populated area will see something. Kind of like the reports when the Phoenix Lights happened.
Was the triangle of lights? Is that what that was?
It was a triangle, and they have those famous images, what looks like those orbs over the mountains, and in the distance you have that kind of almost looks like a half circle kind of effect.
Almost like a fleet of unidentified flying objects.
Yeah, there's the other thing too. When you look at it, was it a fleet, or are those individual lights on a larger? There was a lot of stories that came out around that time of what people saw and what people experienced. So that's another one to dive into.
Yeah, we'll dive into that one another time, because that is a story that I know we have a lot of different accounts for. A lot of people saw that. That's one of the rare sightings that was over a highly populated area. A lot of people got to experience that particular one.
Absolutely.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to cover while we're here? Talking about weird crap. Is there anything more topical, current?
I think for the first show, I think that's a good introduction to what we're gonna do.
I think so too. And I'd like to point out that we don't claim to be experts in the paranormal or the unexplained, but I'd also like to take a moment to just discuss what makes an expert in paranormal studies, paranormal interests. Because Austin and I discussed this quite a bit when we were kicking around the idea for this show. So we were sharing this idea with our friends, our family, saying we were going to do this. And I believe it was your mother who told you that...
And my wife.
And your wife, who told you that you're not an expert in the paranormal.
Oh, not at all. I think the correct phrase they used was, "What do you know about the paranormal?" And that immediately got me, like, I immediately had self-doubt. I was immediately like, oh crap. I don't know. I know some things. I mean, I wouldn't call myself an expert, I guess. And me thinking about that line for a little while, I'm like, wait a minute. If you look at anyone else who studies the paranormal, anybody else, and over the time that people have actually studied these things, since UFOs were first seen, all these ghost stories that go back for hundreds and hundreds of years, cryptid sightings like Bigfoot or Loch Ness Monster or things like that, no one has definitively ever proven any of these things exist. No matter how much time and effort anyone has put into any of this in the field, they have never definitively found evidence for any of these things. So, when I thought of that, I immediately thought, okay, I have as much credit as the next guy.
Meaning anybody does. And invite anybody to share their opinion about this. Your views on it, the way you feel about it. Mm-hmm. So I think that the variance in opinion is what truly makes these sort of things so interesting. Because so many people have so many different takes. There's always that personal little spin that everybody has on them.
Mm-hmm.
But
absolutely.
It's important to keep an open mind.
Absolutely.
And it's important to keep a weird mind, if I must say so myself.
Absolutely. Keep it weird.
Let's keep it weird. I think that's going to wrap up our show for today. It's a good one. I like this. So, in conclusion, stay away from creepy cars. Don't touch them.
Whether it is driven and then wrecked by a famous actor, or it happens to be abandoned on Route 224 in Portage County, stay away from cars.
And for the A&Z podcast, this is Zach.
And Austin.
Signing off.